the purpose of today's webinar is to take you through a new feature that we've just released. It's called Bills and Votes, and just sort of take you through that part of it. It sounds like most of you folks are already 360 clients, and so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the general 360 since most of you already know about it. Does anybody have any trouble hearing me? If you have trouble hearing me, please type in a note about it on the webinar. Okay, so let's get started. So 360 is what we're going to be looking at today, and we're looking at a new feature called Bills and Votes, and it's located right here. Once we turn it on in your data set, it's going to be on the menu just like any other feature you would have in 360. But first, before we go into some of the screens and I show you how it works, I wanted to give you some background on why we built this into the application and what we hope it'll do for you and help get your jobs accomplished. Primarily what we wanted to do is give our clients a way to compare legislator activity on the bills that matter to their organizations, and be able to compare that with Grassroots and PAC information. So for example, if you've got a bill that's really important to you and you've done a bunch of action alerts, and then a vote happens on that bill, how many letters did the legislator, you can sort of see how you're doing. And then also on the PAC side, what matter to you. So the way that we ended up doing that was we've developed a feed for federal bills from the Clerk of the House and from the Secretary of the Senate for floor votes and any federal bill status information. That includes sponsorships, as bills move through the legislative process, the status of those bills and what the most recent actions were, the bill content, all sorts of things like that. And then we've also allowed you to add some of your own custom information to that bill so that you can give folks a little bit more information about it. The feed that we have comes to us directly from the clerk or the Secretary of the Senate. And actually, we get the information more quickly than you would get it on Thomas. We update every 2 hours. And so the information that we get from the House and Senate is usually in 360 within 2 hours of it being published on either the clerk's or the Secretary of the Senate's website. If you compare that to Thomas updates nightly with all the information that happens in that 24-hour period. So if you're looking to get the most up-to-date information and you don't want to wait on Thomas and you don't want to have to go to that screen on the Clerk of the House website that just posts the bill stuff, this will come to you a lot more quickly than other sources. A couple of notes on things that we don't have in the product right now. The committee votes aren't in the product because we don't have a feed of that information. It's something that a lot of people ask about, so I just wanted to sort of get that out of the way. And then as far as state legislation, things that are happening in the state capitals around the country, we don't have a feed for that currently right now either. That is something that's on our product plan, but it would be introduced at a later time. So, just sort of with that background information out of the way, I'm going to spend some time going through both the screens that you would see as a 360 user or administrator, and then we'll spend some time looking at the information that you can provide to your member audiences or your employees on your website as well, which is also part of the package. So let's get to it. So we've got, this is 360, and I'm going to go to the Bills and Votes dashboard right now and show you what that looks like. So this is the place where you're going to have all of your information about the bills and votes that you're tracking. Basically what you're going to do is if something has been introduced in the House or in the Senate and you want to track it, then you can track it from the feed. And so you would click the Track the Bill from the Feed button. You would enter the information about the bill that you want to track and then bring it into your data set by saving it. Once you've tracked it, it shows up here under the bills you're tracking. And then every single time we get an update on a new sponsor or a bill or a vote that's happened on that bill, then that will update your 360 database automatically without you having to do anything. Conversely, if you wanted to track something on your own, say you've got a state bill that's really important to your organization and it's not coming in from the feed, you could enter that manually and you could track all the information manually that you want, including the votes. You can just do vote counts, or you can do votes by individual members if that's something you really would like to do. The other nice thing about the feed and also the votes that you're tracking manually is if someone's a co-sponsor of a bill that you're tracking in 360 and they add themselves as a co-sponsor, then in their legislator record you can see that they're a co-sponsor. And so it's not just going to show up here on the bills and votes screen and in some of the other screens I'm going to show you, but you'll also see it on the legislator screen as well. Same thing for votes. If a legislator takes a vote on an issue that you're tracking, on a bill that you're tracking, then that information will also be in the legislator record, whether they voted yes or no, and a little bit more information about that vote. So that's sort of just a general overview of what the product does. We'll go into a couple of the screens now just to take a look at the information that comes in from the feed. The first thing I'm going to do is take a look at a bill that we've tracked live. And so that means we've brought it in from, in this case, it's the Clerk of the House. And it's a bill that was considered by Energy and Commerce in the spring and then approved by the House. I couldn't find something not controversial that had a lot of activity, so this is the one that we settled on. So this is the Energy Tax Prevention Act. So the information that comes in from the feed is the title of the bill, which is the same title that you'd see on Thomas, the chamber it was introduced in. You can also see the most recent action, and so in this case it was passed by the House and then went over to the Senate and it was referred to a Senate committee, and that's all that's happened in the Senate so far. So if you click on this most recent action, you'll get a little pop-up that shows you every single action that's taken place if you're interested in seeing, for example, the date that it was introduced or the date that the Commerce Committee reported it, all those types of things. They'll show up here. Major actions at the top, other activities at the bottom, all the information about the rule, all the stuff that you would need to know about it. You've also got the session information that comes in from the feed. And then if you'd like to see the bill text, you can click on the View at Thomas button, and then it'll allow you to look at all of the versions of the bill. So if you wanted to take a look at the most recent version that was referred in the Senate, then you could click on that and then read the bill without having to leave 360. It also doesn't make you leave 360 so that you can just close out of that window and come right back to the screen you were in before. So that's some information, general information about the bill that comes in from the feed. There are also some custom details that you can put in. If you've got a different name that you're using for the bill, so this is called the Energy Tax Prevention Act of 2011, but it's really about the EPA regulation of greenhouse gas. If you wanted to give that bill sort of an internal working title, you could do that by naming it. That's going to be by default blank, and you can either use it or not use it depending on your preferences. The status isn't really all that necessary for those bills that are tracked already because we know what the status is from this most recent action. But if you're not tracking it live, if it's a state bill or something that for some reason you don't want to track live, you can select the options that we've offered as sort of a general status information. You can put your own position on the bill, the chance you think it has to pass, and then any comments that you have on the bill, so things that sort of summarize things. If you don't want to have to use the GPO or Library of Congress confusing summary of the bill, then you can summarize it yourself and put it in the comments. Other information that comes in from the feed, we've got sponsors and co-sponsors. And so by sorting by sponsor name, I can see that Fred Upton was a sponsor. And then I can also see every single co-sponsor and the date that their names were added to the bill. And I can sort by any of these fields here. You can also sort by sponsor name if people just want to sort of look through it and see who's on the bill. Like I mentioned before, this information, if I look in Steve Austria's record, in his 360 record, he'll be listed as a co-sponsor of this bill. So that's a great little feature as well. We have amendments, and so any amendment that is offered as a part of this bill on the floor will be tracked here as well. And so that's nice. You can see what sort of activity has been taking place on the bill. Senate amendments would also be tracked here as well, and you can scroll through and see all of them by clicking on these little arrow buttons. Votes are also going to be coming in from the feed. You can bring in votes from the feed, or you can track votes yourself. And so what I've done here is these are the ones that came in from the feed. So these are the ones that happened on the floor when there was floor consideration of the bill. And those came in automatically. I didn't have to do anything to get those. If I wanted to look at a printable version of this vote, I'd get the roll call number. I would get, and then also a list of all the legislators and which way they voted. Back to the votes. I can also enter the votes, we don't have committee votes because they're not electronically available, but if you were to have a copy of the committee report, or if you happen to be at the committee markup and have a list of the legislators and which way they voted and what the totals were, you could enter those yourself by adding a vote. And once that's added, that's also going to be tracked in the legislator's record in 360. And then you can also view information about it. So, for example, we have final passage in the Energy and Commerce Committee. And this is the information I've entered about it. So it was roll call number 9 in the committee, the date it took place, and then the total, yays, nays, and whether it passed or not. Related bills are going to be brought in as well. So we've got the Senate companion legislation, and we've also got the rule for the House bill. And so those are going to be tracked as well. If you wanted to track those bills, you could, since they're their own separate bills. But we do list at least the bill number for the related bills, so you can see what those are. And then you can also put in notes on the bill. So this is just an example note that I put in on something that you wanted to talk about pertaining to the bill. So that's a tracked bill. We also have the ability to look at bills that aren't tracked from the feed. So this is an example of one that I pulled up from the Virginia House of, or the Virginia General Assembly that passed earlier this year. And I entered this manually. And so this was a bill that already passed and it's been signed into law. And so this is the bill number, and all the information that would come in from the feed is available for the user to enter in by hand. And so that's a nice little feature that we can do for those folks who like to track state legislation. You get the introduced date, the titles, and all that sort of thing. And then we've also got a summary that you can put in. I pulled this from the General Assembly website. And then you also get the custom details as well. So we've got the status down here. Since we don't have a status up in the top section, since it didn't get brought in from the feed, then I just moved the status to signed into law since this one's already been signed into law.
Hey, Amy, we actually have a question from the floor. Can you go to the roll call vote, click on one of the members voting, and send them an immediate email?
That's a really good idea for a feature, but it's not currently a feature right now. We do have coming out in the next release, which will probably be happening in August or possibly the beginning of September, the ability to publish action alerts based on these bills and votes. So if you want to target legislators based on their sponsorship of a bill or their lack of sponsorship of a bill, then you'll be able to do that using the Action Center. Co-sponsors are also, you can make these available by adding them. And so Janice is the sponsor of this bill, so I added him as the sponsor. There weren't any co-sponsors. Amendments can be added. So I added one of the amendments that was put in by the committee before it got sent over to the floor, and so those are available as well. So we've got not just the general information, but you can also give the actual content of the amendment, and that was just the amendment that they had on their website. And then we've also got votes. So this one has had one vote on the House side, and I entered that in. So this was a 99-0 yay to nay vote on this date, and this was something I entered in as well. And then notes, you get notes on both tracked and not tracked bills. So that's the bills section. We also have the ability to publish this information for your end users, either your members or your employees, which I'll show you in a minute. But first, I wanted to show you votes, because we also have the ability to track votes, single votes, as opposed to, say, for example, you're interested in a vote that took place on an amendment in an omnibus bill, but you don't care about the thousands of other votes that took place on that bill, you just want the one vote. Then you can track that vote either manually or from the feed. And so I brought this one in, which was actually happened yesterday, and it was a motion to recommit with instructions. So I brought that in from the feed, and we can get the yeas and nays on that without actually having to track the entire bill. And so that can help for folks who are interested in pieces of legislation but don't want to see every single thing that happens on it, because it can get a little bit messy if you have really big bills that you don't really care that much about except for one little provision. I'm going to leave some time for Q&A at the end of this webinar, but if anybody has questions, please feel free to ask them, and I'll try to answer them as best I can. And so we've talked about tracking all of the bills and the votes and everything like that. I am going to show you really quickly before we move to the website part. I'm going to show you this. We were tracking the defense authorization bill, which was sponsored by Buck McKeon. And so I wanted to go over to his legislative record and show you his sponsorship of that. So you guys are probably familiar, those of you who already use 360 are familiar with the legislator record in 360. This is his legislator record. We have all of the information that you're used to seeing, and then we've added sponsored bills. And so it looks like McKeon has sponsored 2 bills from 360 that are tracked in 360. We've got this tax bill, and then we've got the defense authorization. And so that's going to show up in his record as well, as with the votes.
Oh, we have another question.
Okay.
So the state bill area is just a repository for us to enter info, we know, as opposed to collecting any info via a feed. Is that correct? Right.
Yeah, the feed on the state side is much more difficult for folks to gather, and it's been difficult for us to find a good source of that information. And so we're searching for one now that's both accurate and something that we can integrate easily into the system. So once that's and it's something that's a priority to us. So once we're able to locate that, we'll work on getting the state feed as well. But for now, it's just federal. So now you're looking at something different. We're looking at a sample website, and this is just a test website that we have put up. And this is what your end user would see. So, imagine your website here. It's not going to look exactly like this, but this section here under bills is a plugin. And so like a lot of our other features, like our solicitation forms and our action center, we've designed a lot of our external pages to be plugins so that they can be incorporated into any site, either one that we host or one that you're hosting already. It doesn't really matter. The integration is the same. Even though we're hosting the site, we're using an iframe to incorporate this content into the site. And so this is a page that's published out of 360, and this is the plugin for bills. And so you can see the same list that I was tracking over on the 360 side. All the bills I'm tracking here are going to show up here as well for your end users. And so if you want to just put up a section of your website so that you can let folks know about the bills that are affecting your organization, whether you're for or against them, what your position is, information about the bills so people can check out their co-sponsors and things like that. That's something that you can do as part of this feature as well. And so this section, this first page under key bills, is where you can list the bills that you are tracking in 360. And you can decide in 360 whether to make these public or not. So if you're tracking 45 different bills in 360, but you only want to make 5 of them publicly available on the website, you can just make those 5 publicly available so they're not having to sort through all of the stuff that you're tracking. A lot of the information that you can view in 360 is also available here. Not all of it, but a lot of it is. The number of co-sponsors are listed right on this front screen. You also get the position that you've entered in 360, so if you're for or against the bill, it'll list it here. We also have the name of the bill. And then if they click on, and let's go to the one that we were looking at before, so this is the Energy Tax Prevention Act, that's the Fred Upton bill. If we click to view it, oops, I think I must have timed out. Let's see.
Oh, well, while you're doing that, we actually have another question. Can you change the information that is viewed on the website? For instance, can you hide the position on bills?
If you wanted to hide the position, there are a couple things you could do. As part of the product, we are going to be putting everything that you put in 360 on the bill, because that's part of the product. But if you wanted to just not put your position in, you wanted to leave that blank, you don't have to fill it in. It's not a required field. So over here, if you just don't fill in this position, you're fine to just keep it private. So this is an example of one of the bills that we're tracking. So this is the information about the bill. We've got the name of it and the position if you decide you want to enter it. The sponsor of the bill, comments about it. So this would be the information that you entered about it. Again, you can leave that blank, or you can just put, something very innocuous if you'd like. A summary that came from I think this came from a news article about it. And then this is the official summary of the bill, which was provided by, in this case, it was provided by the Virginia General Assembly, but the Thomas provided Library of Congress summaries would be available as well. And then we also have the ability to look at sponsors of the bill. So this one's got a sponsor. If they wanted to scroll through and look at the sponsors, they could do that as well. We also have the ability to look at the votes. So this is the vote that one of the votes we're tracking. We can also search for votes. And so I'm going to search based on the roll call number. You can search on roll call number, bill number, or the question text, which would be the, what the vote's for. And so roll call 111 in this Congress happens to be on an amendment vote for H.R. 1. So let's take a look at it. So this is the summary information on the bill. So we've got the roll call number, the total yeas and nays, the total not voting, and then what the question was. And then if we look at the results, this lists every legislator and their vote on the bill. So you get the yeas at the top, and then the nays down at the bottom. And so that's a really great feature for folks that we can put on the website, and it doesn't take any customization. It's just something that's part of the package, the Bills and Votes package. We also are going to be building some additional features off of this in the next few months. Coming up, leading up to the election, we're going to be adding the ability to publish scorecards based on the information that you see here. So if you've got 5 different votes and then a couple of bills that you want to score, and then provide information to your employees or your members about those bills and votes, then you can do that. You'll be able to score co-sponsorships of bills, because we understand that a lot of our clients, they're really important bills, sometimes don't get to the floor, and so the only way they can score that is by scoring co-sponsorship. So we're going to allow them, folks, to score either co-sponsorship or the actual votes that take place on things. And you can score, it's not just final passage that you can score. You can score a motion to recommit. You could score an amendment vote, any of the votes that happen from the feed or from your manually entered information. So if a committee vote's really important to you and you want to allow folks who are on that committee to get credit for a vote that they did in your favor, then you could also add that to the scorecard. So that's going to be coming out in the next couple of months. And then we're also going to be adding additional features to this as well. But this is sort of the the introduction to Bills and Votes from Aristotle. that is kind of a really general overview of the system. I'm happy to entertain any questions that folks have. If you guys want to have any specific questions to you or anything that you'd like to know, or I'm happy to answer them. So should I take it off mute?
Sure, why not? Let's do that.
I think we only have a we've got 13 people, so we're going to take it off of mute so people can ask if they'd like. Or if you don't want to ask on the phone, you can also just send in your question to Colin.
Anyone?
Put it back on mute. Yeah. We're getting some noise, so we're going to put it back on mute.
Oh.
Well, if nobody has any questions, we can, we'll just end a little early and...
Oh, wait, hold on. We actually, one just came up. Not sure if this has been answered yet, but when does this go live? This is already live, isn't it?
We released it recently. We're going to be releasing this to a handful of clients first. Some of you are on the call. And we'll be in touch with you about that. For those of you, and some of our clients have this specifically in their contracts and some don't. So you'll either need to review your contract or talk with your sales rep about whether this is something that is included in your package or if it's something that you'll need to get as an add-on. But to answer the question specifically, we do have this out, and we're going to be releasing it to clients in the next couple of weeks.
Someone's asking right now, how does this compare to Vocus?
As far as I'm aware, and I haven't used the Vocus system a lot, but I did have a chance to use it a little bit, the information that we get is going to be updated, I think, a little more quickly. That's one difference because I think they're using Thomas. The other difference is on this, I'm going back to the bill screen so we can take a look at it. On the bill screen, when all this custom detail stuff, so your own name for the bill and the comments and stuff, that's not something that they currently offer. So for example, back when card check was really big, card check wasn't the name of the bill, it was called something else, but people always called it card check, and so they wanted to put on their website card check instead of the technical bill name. And so those are the two primary differences that I'm aware of.
Will we have the ability to send out action alerts?
You will. That's coming out not from this release, but the next one. So sometime in this quarter that will be available. All right, well, thanks everybody for your time today, and if anybody has any questions that they either think of after we get finished here, or something that you didn't want to ask on the webinar, just get in contact with Colin, and I'll be happy to give you a call and talk with you about it.
Yep, you can just email us at info@aristotle.com, and I'll send it along. Thanks a lot.
Okay, bye everybody. Thanks.